All right, beautiful day to ride, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be the SRF. This is a 2022. Make sure all my jackets are closed before I mess around and lose a phone. As most of you guys have been riding know, riding is a great way to lose a phone. So yeah, this is an all-electric bike. I've put a lot of miles on the DSRX, the adventure style bike. Whoa, let's adjust mirrors. And I will say, electric is not for everybody, but if you've never ridden an electric bike, I would reserve the judgments, because as an avid sport biker myself, I will say I have fallen in love with electric as sort of another option for riding. And that's why, that is absolute why. This thing has so much juice behind it, and it's really easy to ride, which I would say is part of what also makes it a lot of fun as a bike to own on the side, especially. You know, range is definitely going to be the biggest thing that people mention. And just last week I was talking to somebody that was just, you know, walking the floor, and I mentioned electric, and both him and his buddy looked at me at the exact same time and looked at me and said, "And what's the range?" it was too funny. But anyway, so the range definitely varies on how you ride it. You're gonna see on this test ride how aggressive riding can adjust the range. Currently we're down to 53 miles at 38%, which, do your own math, it does turn into a good amount of range. From 100, you know, you can get all the way up to 160 miles in the city on this bike, more like 150-ish. But stop and go traffic, this bike benefits a lot from, because of regenerative braking. So highway is actually its weakest point. Generally you can get anywhere from 60 to 70 miles of range on the highway, depending on how you ride. If you ride very, very aggressive, like I'm talking breaking every speed limit in America for the entire ride, you might get down to 55. Most people shouldn't be riding like that, and especially shouldn't be riding this, shouldn't be riding like that, and shouldn't be looking at an electric bike for that reason. And yes, that is one of the things that makes it a lot of fun, is the instant torque, even though that person didn't expect it and I let them slide. Now when it comes to charge time, you can do anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half on a charge point charger. So something that, you know, you pull up to, you see the cars at the mall, you know, plugging into chargers. That's just like this one. It is level 2, so it looks like that. And this thing is incredibly quick on the highway. There's just absolutely no worries about getting around the people you need to get around. You know, like let's say there's a car right there, literally no hand on the throttle. It's so quick. It is so quick and easy to accelerate the speed, and it just wants to keep going. And that's what I will say is the biggest difference between the 75-7 motor and the 75-10 motor. This bike comes with a 75-10 motor, which produces about 120 horsepower. Off the top of my head, I do not remember the torque, but I remember the torque is the most impressive number of that mix, of course. Now the next thing is going to be weight on this bike, because performance is just a non-factor because it is so fast. Weight. Now this bike does weigh a little bit more than some of its counterparts in the industry. You'll guess correctly that it's because of the big battery, 17.3 kilowatts at its 110% charge capacity. Does create a pretty big weight discrepancy. So what I will say about the weight, so even though the numbers on this bike do show a pretty high number of number of pounds, the way that this bike's weight is balanced is what's most important. So it is very low to the ground, very low center of gravity, and you can really feel the bike rotating around that battery, and that just makes it so easy to flick around a corner. It has very smart traction control and ABS. So I'm not worried about, even though I have all this torque, you know, will I accidentally spin the tire, you know, things like that. And it's very possible, very, very possible, especially wet, gravel, lean angle, stuff like that can create those situations. Every time I've been on the Zero, especially the premium ones, like the DSRX, SRF, SR, and SRS, I have had zero trust issues with lean angle. It's because it's a very smart bike. So we've gotten a taste of sport mode. You see, you know, a mile or so in sport mode on the highway will do to your range. Now let's talk about eco mode. So what eco mode is going to do, I just switched it into eco, is it is going to reduce your throttle response, so it's not crazy fast. You know, reduce throttle response so you're not dumping all your electricity off of every light, and it is easy to do because it's fun, it's addicting to twist this throttle wide open, especially in sport mode. So right there, that was about a quarter throttle, and I left the line very conservatively, you know, easing onto the highway nice and slow. Another thing that eco mode does is it caps your speed at I think about 74. Let's see, there it is. So that's 74, 75, wide open throttle. It's not going an inch more. So that is, again, to kind of counteract the biggest weakness of this bike, which is going to be highway speeds. If you keep this thing going up at 80, 85, riding it more like an adventure bike, I mean a sport touring bike or sport bike, you will see a very big difference in the range that Zero claims and the range that you're actually getting. So if you're doing a lot of highway riding, eco mode is going to be crucial for you. Another very cool mode is actually canyon mode. So what canyon mode is supposed to do, close the throttle and it completes the mode switch. What canyon mode is supposed to do is give you a more internal combustion feeling engine brake. So that way, when you're coming into a corner like this, you're expecting a very specific amount of engine brake, right? So if you get a very different amount of engine brake, then that can throw somebody off. Yes, this bike is a ton of fun, man. It just goes where you want it to go. You don't have to worry about slip. You don't have to worry about about sound and getting pulled over. The final thing I will talk about this bike as we're wrapping up the test ride is going to be maintenance. So maintenance on these bikes are next to nothing. As you can imagine, you pretty much just do your brakes, you know, brake pads, rotors, brake fluid for the front and the rear, belts. This is not a chain drive, this is a belt drive. So as you guys know, belts do last a fair amount longer than chains and definitely require a lot of maintenance on the way. You keep on top of your forks, you know, just keep an eye on the forks and the suspension. If you have fork seals leaking or things like that, then obviously take care of that. But we're talking some pretty long intervals on the suspension now. So with that being said, you know, this bike is very maneuverable. Final impressions, very maneuverable, very fun. I can trust the bike on the side of the tire, and the tires that it come with are no joke at all. These are Pirelli Corsas or Diablos, I forget what they're called now. Another thing that's pretty cool about these bikes is if you have the kill switch on, parking mode, reverse. So strange to get used to, but it's a lot of fun. You hit the cruise control button, it switches forward, reverse. So you can imagine you're in a parking lot, lots of gravel, or maybe you're at the beach, lots of sand. Again, this is not the lightest bike in the world, so it's never a bad thing. Once you're done, kill switch off, on, we're back to normal. So that's been my review of this SRF. Fantastic bike. If you've never ridden electric, reserve your judgments, because I really wanted to hate this bike, but now I have an absolute blast on these things. Come check them out.